Well, hello everyone. Welcome to today's video interview session. Today I'm joined with Niall O'Brien. Niall, how are you, mate?
Oh yeah, I'm good. Yeah,
that's good.
Okay.
So thanks for agreeing to record this with me. Very interesting times at the moment, so I'm pretty keen to get into, just a bit of discussion with you about your role, your business, the team you look after, but as well your sort of thoughts and views on, what's happening in the industry. So, look, you've sent me a bit of a short bio. So for everyone watching or listening, I'll read out that bio and then we'll get into the conversation. So Niall is a global highways leader and road safety advocate. So in 2019, Niall was invited by Engineers Australia to become an engineering executive, and we'll talk more about that later, to complement his chartership. So in 2018, Niall was made a Fellow of Roads Australia. And in 2016, Niall was nominated by female leaders in the business to be the male champion of change. So since 2016, Niall has supported the Engineering Aid Australia Indigenous Engineering School, hosted by the Uni of Sydney. So the program entices and supports young Indigenous Australians on an engineering career path. So as a former truck driver, he's passionate about freight and freight safety. So Niall, welcome to the call.
Thank you.
All right, so obviously we've got some pre-prepared questions, so we'll dive in and just see where the convo goes. So look, very open-ended to start with. So how are you and your team travelling at the moment with everything that's going on?
I think very well. They're all good. My team's across the globe actually, so there's they're in different countries. So it's interesting to see how the different levels of restrictions from country to country are, and how it's having different levels of impact. But generally, the mood's good, and everyone's understands why, and they're just everyone's been positive. I think it's and when you look at Australia, it's comparatively to other countries, it seems to be faring very well indeed.
Yeah. You look, we've just heard of potentially a round of easing restrictions on the quarantine stuff. So look, it's it's starting to look positive in terms of how Australia's going with the whole global pandemic.
Mm.
So moving on to that, mate. So how has this current kind of COVID-19 thing that we're all experiencing actually impacted the way that you and your team deliver your work? How do you interact with your team members, your clients, and your suppliers?
It's done one thing really, and it's made us thankful that we work for a business that has invested heavily in sound IT and support systems, and encouraged working from home or flexible working patterns. So for us, the adaptation to not being in the office and having to do things remotely has been quite seamless. But I hear of different stories in other organisations where they're they've been a bit more traditional and rigid in their style of working, and don't even offer laptops, have like the towers in office-based towers. So it's I think in our industry, the IT people are the unsung heroes. They're our doctors and nurses.
Absolutely.
And, we're certainly appreciating them at this very point in time more than ever.
And you've got, like you said before, a global role anyway. So you were, for want of a better word, kind of used to kind of managing and navigating a team all around the world anyway. So it's kind of probably business as usual for you.
Yeah, that's right. And living out suitcase and time zones and flights and all of that jazz. That sounds really, really great and awesome at the start, but after 2 years, you're sort of like going, okay,
get over it.
Yeah,
awesome. So it sounds like, mate, obviously big business that you work for. You guys have, it gets thrown out a lot, the word pivot. You've pivoted quite well. You put everyone at home, staff safety first, and you've used the IT systems that you've already had and sort of invested heavily in to kind of really make sure that you're still delivering for your clients. Have you had any feedback from clients on the delivery and how you kind of transitioned?
Oh, look, most of the clients have been very understanding. They expect delays, or they expect issues, but so far we haven't actually had to pull that lever. We've been still delivering on time, to the right quality, and if anything, we've had, and particularly government clients where their IT systems aren't as advanced. They've been a little bit, they've struggled a little bit, but I'm very surprised at actually how government has reacted, and you know, the employees have adapted. I mean, we were expecting something a bit more of an impact, but they've been outstanding. And
Yeah, good. Yeah, I like you. I've heard similar stories of some businesses are struggling in terms of pivoting and you know getting their teams at home, and they're kind of the businesses like no one could have seen this coming, but they're the businesses that didn't necessarily invest in IT. But most businesses have really done quite well, and most people are embracing the work from home thing quite well.
yeah, and I think you know, any business, you know, you have a you have a sort of a risk map, and you look at what your top risks are in each jurisdiction. And I don't think anyone would have guessed something like this, and would have measured. And you know, we have had it before. I mean, in jurisdictions that we that we cover, you know, with SARS in China and Hong Kong, and you know, the Sub-Asian continent, it's sort of around 10 years ago. I mean, so it's not as if we you know, we haven't experienced it, but and things were different then in terms of IT and our ability to adapt. But I think if something as big as this had happened 10 years ago, 15 years ago, then it would be a different story. Because
you mean in terms of the impact on the economy?
Well, I think it's just the ability for everyone to work from home, because you know, it's the improved internet connections from now versus 15 years ago, and you know, the fact that, you know, we pretty much all had desktop computers 15 years ago, you know, with the CRT monitors. I mean, you imagine lugging those things home, and it's I think it would have been you know, I think it would have been a different story.
Yep. You know, interesting times, and I'm keen to, you know, get into towards the end of the video and talk about, you know, what's next and what we sort of think is coming based on COVID. So now to a bit of leadership. And, you know, some of the reasons for us doing this is obviously I represent college leadership and management in Queensland, and talking to you because you're an exec. Part of the reason we're talking, but also more broadly because you hold a leadership position in your business. So, you know, this question is, you know, how are you connecting and motivating your team to ensure good quality output without being overbearing or a micromanager? And I'm really, interested on your views on this.
Well, I've always lived by the adage of, you know, always communicate verbally first, you know, and you know, so always talk to people. And I think that's more important than ever, you know, through this period. And you know, in that realm, because, you know, my people are, you know, located all over the place, and none of them are my direct reports. So essentially, you know, I have to get things done by influence. So that, you know, and that happens by being nice.
Yep.
And not, you know, not being a micromanager or overbearing. So with people more than ever, because, you know, they're not sitting next to you in the office, you know, and you can't sort of just go for cups of coffee and you know, those little sort of breakouts. I mean, you've really got to connect more, you know, verbally. You know, this sort of media where everyone's sort of on Zoom or Skype or Teams has been great. Typically you'd have phone calls, but even the phone calls are being ditched for the virtual face-to-face time because of social interaction.
Yeah.
In a world where we can't socially interact.
I know, right? It's very interesting. So, mate, there's a bit of internet lagging here. So I just want to kind of repeat. So in terms of you know, this question's really come about because we're talking as a leadership team in one of the businesses I work with, and they were saying, look, this environment would have to be an absolute nightmare for micromanagers. And you're really saying that, you know, it just takes more communication, more connection, and trying to replicate those one-on-ones in a virtual setting to keep connecting with your team. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yep.
So there was just one thing I was going to say. You know, just considering about your team, and you really got to think at this point in time about their personal circumstances. I mean, it's always good to have a relationship with team members where you sort of do understand, particularly if they're direct reports. You know, you understand a certain amount of their personal lives. But you know, this has got to be a pretty tough time for some people because of their living arrangements. Yeah, you know, if you're living in an apartment with young kids, or it's got to be pretty tough. Or if you live on your own, you know, it's got to be super tough if you're living on your own. So, I'm quite fortunate. I'm in a house of 5 people. My kids are old enough that they don't need, too much
Attention.
attention. So the youngest is 15, so they can go on and do their own business, and it's good. But I think it must be pretty tough in some households at this point in time.
Yeah, look, my boys are grade 2 at school, and talking to a lot of the parents who are all homeschooling. Everyone's circumstances is different, but most people, like you said, whether you've got kids or not kids, or whether you're alone, or I think everyone's circumstances are different, and some people are really struggling to juggle the job and the kids, and you're homeschooling your son. Like I posted about this other day, I was homeschooling my boy, and I could see the clients' calls coming through on my phone, and I could feel myself getting so frustrated, but I had to keep coming back to, homeschooling of my kid was a priority for me. So I had to keep doing that, and then call back 5 people later.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a much more appreciation for teachers at the end of this.
Yeah.
And these sort of helicopter parents who sort of think that the schools are responsible for everything, and I think it's there's going to be a bit of a reset there, and which is good, because they've been undervalued for many years.
And look, I love what you talked about before, which was, it's, as a leader, it's about checking in with your team and recognizing that it's not just business as usual at the moment. And, I've heard some good stories about people who do 15-minute catch-ups with their team, virtual coffees in the morning, and they ask questions along the lines of, not so much about workload, but, what are some struggles that you're facing at the moment, to kind of prompt. So you talk about workload, what are you working on for the day? And then just kind of, if you feel like sharing, what are some things that are, what are you struggling with, or what's holding you back? And a lot of the time that's well received from the team, because they can actually go, oh, look, I'm really struggling with this, or I'm really struggling with that. And often it's got nothing to do with work. It's usually, a personal thing.
Yeah.
And in terms of your clients, mate, you, I guess, connecting and managing your clients similar way, and you're adopting that similar methodology or approach with your clients, touch base all the time?
Yeah, look, that's just business as usual, really.
Okay.
To have that manner with clients.
Yep.
Emails are very impersonal, and I think emails have been great for business, but they've also been quite poisonous. They can be written and received in different ways, and I think the whole idea of email should be a follow-up to a conversation, and if you apply that rule as far as practically possible, then emails are being used for what they should be used for. They shouldn't be the start of a conversation.
Agreed. Mate, in terms of your leadership style, what sort of, I guess, personality traits or skill sets do you really think are supporting you through this time to be an effective leader?
You've got to have a good level of empathy and understanding, and as I mentioned previously, you've got to have a license to be able to have good conversations with your team, and that does come over time. You need to be able to chat about anything, non-work related stuff as well, and also be in a position where they can just reach out to you, for whatever reason. I've got people in different time zones, and I do say, it doesn't matter what time it is, just message me, text me, and if I'm up, then we can have a chat. So, everyone's feeling a little bit vulnerable at the moment, a little bit unsure, but to be a good leader, it's also about focusing on the positive side of things. And there's so much positives that are coming out what we're learning at the moment through these times, and both work and personally. People are reflecting on their own lives and what's important, what's not important. I'm really excited about the world post COVID-19, and just how we're going to carry on some of the great lessons that we're learning, and accelerate some of the things that we know are going to happen anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I love what you talk about there. So it's to be a good leader through these times, it's having empathy. It's having that recognition that your team may need you maybe a bit more than they're used to needing you, and being available for them. So that's, you kind of reaching out, connecting with them, let me know what's going on. I'm here for you, that kind of thing. And I think that's really, really important through these times.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's, you know, I've dealt with, you know, in my life, I've dealt with all sorts of things really, sorts of trauma, and you know, both either directly related to myself or my family, or, you know, with a you know, a direct report, and having to manage them through a situation, a scenario. The difference with this is, you know, everyone's going through it. Yeah. So, you know, no one's suffering in silence, albeit everyone's going through it, and through different, you know, but they've got different experiences, because, you know, their setups are different, or, you know, so, and we've seen some of the you know, backlash with celebrities who have you know, been sort of on social media and talking about how tough it's been, you know, isolating in their $12 million mansion on the coast, and you know, and so people are losing patience and tolerance with everyone jumping on a bandwagon. You know, it's which is, you know, so I think that's quite funny, actually, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think you know, too, I think it's recognizing that, staying on the leadership piece, that people might be acting a bit differently too at the moment. Like, you just don't know what your team members have got going on at home, and don't just write someone off if they're really aggressive with you, or they're acting differently or weirdly than what they normally are, because like you said, everyone's going through this and everyone's got different circumstances, everyone's dealing with it differently. So people will very likely, when they feel afraid or threatened, act or lash out or be a bit different. So again, that empathy piece as a leader really comes to the forefront.
Yeah, I've noticed I'm getting a lot less traffic in my mailbox. You know, in my email box. You know, it's probably half what it normally is. You know, and a lot of that's through internal comms within the business. You know, it's been scaled right down, which is, you know, appropriate and right. And, you know, we're getting really concise communications around the business and COVID-19 from the right people, which has been excellent to see our leaders step up and you know, lead effectively, and a small number of people, not everyone, jumping on and you know, publishing their thoughts around you know, what we should be doing, or you know, how businesses should be reacting, which has been good.
Yeah, good. And then how do you, like, as a leader, again, what are you struggling with through these times? Like, what are you finding hard or tough?
I think it's the lack of having the commute. I think you know, I think what we don't appreciate is what a commute actually does. It winds you in and out of work. Yeah.
Yep.
So, you know, to be at home and then try and switch out of work mode, or switch into work mode, you know, it's a bit of an art to do that. You know, it's good if you've got a zone in the house where, like a room or an office. I'm in my daughter's bedroom at the moment, but because, you know, she's working, actually, and it was available, and but normally I'm in an open plan part of the house, you know, because where my setup is, which is fine, but, you know, it's not ideal all of the time, certainly not for scenarios like this. But you know, it's, for me, I'm you know, that having that sort of that commute, you know, or walk to work, or drive to work, you know, where you can sort of, you know, wind in and out, is you know, I value that more now, and a lot of people, you know, particularly if you're riding on buses or you know, public transport, you know, a lot of people use a commute time to catch up on social media and that kind of thing. So
and just to you know, debrief or have a break from the you know, from the workflow.
Read a book, or it's yeah. So that's my only thing, but, you know, it's pretty minor.
And what are you doing to, like, do you have some things that work for you in terms of being able to bring yourself into work and out of work? Does anything work for you, or?
Oh, look, I think I've recognised that work isn't 9 to 5 anymore. You know, it's you know, whilst I do work different locations, you know, I tend to sort of work regular hours most of the time, and but now it's you know, I don't feel guilty about hooking a lead on the dog and taking her out for an hour and a half midday. You know, it's you know, walking around some of the nice sort of walks that we've got around here, and you know, just block it out in my calendar, because I know I might be working till 7 or 8 o'clock that night, or
Yep.
be picking up stuff later on in the evening, or even been working over weekends as well. It's so it's been a bit more sort of like a bit more flexible around not punching the hours up together, which is fine.
Yeah, good. Mate, to the market now. So, looking at the short and medium term, look, we all know we're going to see a market contraction. How do you make sure you adapt to stay in the game in terms of, and when I say stay in the game, how do you continue to add value for your company and your clients when you know that, the workload's drying up potentially and the market's kind of contracting?
Look, I sort of challenge the notion that the market will contract. I think some markets are actually going to increase.
Yes.
I think anything associated with residential building, or potentially commercial building as well, is going to be challenged. But there's opportunities in there as well in terms of repurposing and or considering different types of projects. But I certainly think in the infrastructure space, I mean, we're seeing governments across the globe, and particularly here in Australia, be very responsive and value the what injecting money into infrastructure does in terms of actually injecting money into jobs and into the economy. We've seen it actively done here in Australia since the GFC.
Yep.
and it kept us away from recession. We were one of the very few countries in the world that did actually avoid the recession. So it's promising to see, but it's also promising to see other countries take a similar stance. I mean, New Zealand are going pretty hard, and but other countries are focusing on infrastructure, like the UK, for instance,
Yep.
and the United States. They've been focusing on infrastructure spend for some time. So I think there's positive things. I mean, even things like data centers. I mean, the demand now for actually more data centers is going to be increased as well. So and I think those countries that haven't got data centers, particularly like Africa and South America, you would start to see a rapid increase or uptake of data, because that's communications is one thing that's really gone haywire.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there's a couple of questions in this. Firstly, like you talk about, the government stimulus around infrastructure spending. So obviously they've given a mandate to all, so federal giving a mandate to state and state to local to say, work out amongst yourself what projects are shovel ready and bring them to us, and let's start to fast track them. How do you as a consultant, I mean, obviously if you're on one of those projects, great. But how do you either, what would your recommendation be to kind of try and get on that, or give yourself the best opportunity to make the most of that opportunity?
So I think there's a fine line, between being helpful and providing value to clients and being an ambulance chaser.
Yep.
And I did warn my team pretty early on about this, about the rules of seeking or sourcing work from clients in this scenario, that we've really got to be in a position where we're genuinely helping or assisting. So really, the primary areas are the jobs that you're already engaged on, and whether you can accelerate programs or extend the commission to, say, if it's a planning job, or you're doing concept design, extend it right through to detailed design, that kind of thing. Or if it's detailed design, how you can actually get it to IFC and get it shovel ready quicker. So now they're real genuine ways to assist clients and to support both state and the federal government in terms of their narrative of spending the next 6 months to get shovel ready projects. So 2021 is going to be a year of construction. So
yeah,
and also helping the clients in terms of planning as well. But I think you know what I've seen sort of not in my organisation, but I've heard of, you know, people trying to sort of shuckle in on projects which they've got no need to be there, or you know, and I think that's just not playing cricket.
Yeah. So really, it's help you add value as much as you possibly can to your clients. Really look at ways to add value to their business, understand their business, and help them through this period, because they're hurting as well. And look for opportunities where, you know, if you can get a project that you're already working on for a client fast tracked, and you work on it to get it fast tracked, that helps them as much as it helps you. So
Yeah.
you know, there's a vested interest for both parties. But like you said, don't be an ambulance chaser. Actually care genuinely for your client's business.
Yeah, and it's a fine line. You know, it's a fine line. So we've already seen, you know, not necessarily, well, not in our industry, but you know, we've seen, you know, some people in the supply chain take advantage of the situation. So, you know, manufacturers and suppliers of face masks, for instance, have, you know, hiked prices up sort of several %, and you know, and this is to their customer base. Now to think they can do that and get away with that, they'll get away with it once because you're forced to pay it, yeah. But you know, it's not going to be forgotten.
That's right.
You know? And you know, so that kind of behaviour is just very, very, very short-sighted, and again, it doesn't pass the public test as well. I mean, you know, we're seeing in the UK, in particular, where a number of prominent business people are, you know, requesting handouts from the government, or bailouts, or loans, but there's this very strong public backlash, and in some cases, you know, active petitions against them getting any support because of their actions that they've done over the last 10 years, which also includes suing the National Health Service. You know, one particular individual who shall remain nameless. Do your research. But yeah, and so it really just goes to show how your actions, you know, have got to be ethical, and because at any one time it will come back to bite you. And right now we are seeing that. We're seeing some pretty poor behaviour from people, but it is a very, very small number of people. But we're also seeing the poor behaviour of people's past play out in decision making right now. So yeah, it's interesting times.
It is, and it's like you said, it's a fine line. If you've got a business owner that's trying to keep their doors open and their staff employed, you know, on some level they will do whatever they can to keep work coming in and their staff employed. And so it's a very ethical discussion, to be honest, on how far you go to secure work and whether you're crossing the line into unethical territory just because you're trying to keep your doors open of your business. And you know, you can understand why people who are faced with their business shutting down would do such things. So it's that's an interesting debate, maybe for another time. But
yeah.
You answered it at the start. How do you think Australia's faring when it compared to the rest of the world with this COVID response?
Oh, look, I'll be honest. In the early days, I was a bit like, you know, we weren't shutting down quick enough, and you know, I felt we weren't responding enough. But I mean, clearly the experts who are managing this have you know, party to a lot more information, because you know we were doing very well. I mean, you look at the numbers, you look at you know, just the way the government has been very supportive with you know, stimulus packages, but also, you know, protecting workers and protecting the, you know, the smaller businesses. I think it's been great, and also committing to, you know, the infrastructure spend. You know, but I think you know, we're quite unique in that, you know, we were you know, we were in a very good position financially. You know, there's plenty of countries across the world which weren't in that position, so they're really going to struggle through this, and they're not going to have the same experience. So you know, it's I do worry a little bit. Well, I do worry about what life will be like in 2 or 3 years' time, because you know, obviously we are closely aligned to China and Asia.
Yes.
And I believe the economic impact will be felt quite significantly in that region, and you know, and that will no doubt impact us.
Well, I think it's made us realise just how reliant we are on those countries to keep some of our sectors of our industry going. Like the manufacturing sector, for example, heavily reliant on China. So we're now, I mean, I think it's a good thing Australia's been forced to kind of look at how do we bring most of that stuff back internally, back into Australia to keep those things going that we need to keep going.
Yeah, I think anyone who had a production line stop because one widget wasn't being delivered from China is going to ask themselves some pretty tough questions around
Right.
the risk profile, because it's certainly made everyone realise that you can't rely on one particular manufacturing location, and unfortunately over the last 20 years we've just chased price. It's all been about price, and the consumers has already been about price. We haven't valued what it means to build something in your own environment. We are seeing that. We are seeing sort of the farmers markets and the more sort of like produce by local in the food space. I mean, that's been happening and been very positive in Australia for many years. That value on buying local. But when you talk about everything else, there's I think we're going to learn from this, and there'll probably be more value on that as well.
And maybe that leads well into the next question around, based on your viewpoint, what sectors within the engineering industry do you think will do well and not so well? You touched on it a little bit, but love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so I mean, certainly residential construction. I think, and even like things like apartments. I think the demand for apartments. A lot of people from this will also have a bit of a rethink around, what's important. Is it location? So particularly if you've got young kids living in an apartment, it would have been extremely tough. This period. So I think we may see a migration of people from our cities to rural communities, because you can move to a rural community and get more bang for your buck, and the jobs are there. I mean, there is it's just what you want to earn and where you want to live, and so I think or we may see people move more to the outskirts of the cities, and to get out of apartments into houses. So
have a backyard,
yeah. So I think there will be a sort of an adjustment, and there's been sort of various sort of claims around what the potential impact's going to be on pricing. I mean, we know there's going to be an impact, but can't really sort of second guess as to what it's going to be. But obviously, price drives everything. And potentially in commercial, office spaces and stuff like that, there could be a reduced demand because as people recognise the value of working from home. If everyone who can work from home 1 day a week, then assuming half the population fits into that bracket, then that's a 10% reduction on everything. So so whether it's floor space or commuting journeys or all of that kind of jazz. So I think I think there could be a slowing down there. But again, as mentioned previously, certainly things like data centers are going to be expedited, and the spend on infrastructure.
Do you have much of a thought around like the oil and gas or the resources sector or anything like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's something funny going on in the oil and gas industry at the moment, or particularly in the oil industry with the price of fuel. We went to minus $37 US dollars in the States a few weeks ago, based on the fact that they can't stop the wells. They've got to keep pumping the stuff out of the ground, and but they run out of storage, so they're actually paying people to take it away. So, which is pretty unprecedented. Look, I mean, as soon as we start moving again, that demand will go back up. But will it be the same demand as it was previously? Well, no, probably not. But I think the rate of production will adjust accordingly. So I think that will correct itself. One thing I have sort of talked about previously is freight, and as long as we consume, freight will always be a part of our lives. But going back to what we mentioned previously about manufacturing and demand, I mean, I think there's been a bit of a shift, or there will be a shift. There's been an increase in the last mile freight. from the shop to your door, like all the Uber Eats and all that kind of stuff, and more people are buying stuff on eBay. But I think the next the demand for it, stuff being imported is probably going to be reduced, and I think some of the big purchases that we have will be deferred, so there'll be a decrease on some of those big items.
Yep.
So I think there'll be a net reduction in freight, but there will be an increase at the lower end of that that last mile.
Areas and that kind of thing. Yeah. Yep. Moving on, so how do you think people are coping with this isolation? And this is a bit of a mental health discussion. It's like, how do you think people are going in general from a mental health point of view?
I think the first thing to recognise is that people have different coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
Some people are really resilient and have gone through worse things actually.
Yeah.
And some others are have never experienced anything like this, so nor understand the potential economic toil that might unfold in the next 3 to 5 years. The last time we really had economic toil in Australia would have been the early 90s, when the interest rates were sitting at 17%, and most people wouldn't even know or remember or weren't even alive to
know how hard that was.
Yeah, know how hard that was. Yeah. I was, it had the same in the UK. Obviously, I'm from the UK, so we were going through the same thing. And I was too young to own a property, and I was still finishing schooling, but I was acutely aware of what was going on. But I think with this, we do have the saving grace that everyone is going through it. So, albeit you can't be complacent around, just on that statement that everyone's going through it, because we're all going. We all went into this with different levels of mental state, and we all have different coping mechanisms, and we're all in different environments, so we're all going through the same thing, but the things that impact or affect how we get out the other side aren't the same, and that's what we've got to be so careful about, that we're always constantly having conversations with people, being empathetic up front, and actually first question, how are you feeling, and then get into business. I think people are going to be wearing their hearts on their sleeves, and I hope it continues. I hope this more empathetic way of doing business and talking to people actually continues. Back into the days when we're back in the office. Yeah,
look, it's an important leadership discussion, isn't it? So everyone who's in a leadership role, who looks after a team of people, coming back to our earlier discussion, it is so important at the moment to keep checking in with your team. How are you going? What's working? What's not? More communication than less is better in this environment. And as a leader, being acutely aware that everyone's going to react and behave a bit differently through this period, and having that empathy is key. Love it.
Yeah, and it's got to be one-on-one. I mean, you can do that at a team meeting with a group of people, but which is fine. I don't say stop those, but you've got to also have the one-on-one. You don't get it out of people unless you're actually having that one-on-one.
Yeah.
So.
Agreed, mate. What do you think business looks like after this is all over? Sort of a bit of a crystal ball kind of moment.
I hope we don't. Sorry, I'll ask that again, and I'll start answering it again. Sorry.
That's all right.
Just fell over myself.
Let me just. So, mate, what do you think business looks like in the engineering industry once this is all over?
I hope we never forget 2020. I think if we come out of this and it gets forgotten about, and we take for granted the opportunity that we've had to learn so much about human behaviour, what's important, what's not important. That'd be a big failure. I'm pretty confident that we won't forget, and I'm pretty confident we're gonna come out of this and learn a lot. In engineering, we've had a resilience focus for many years. Whether that's extreme weather, fire, or terrorism. But in most parts of the world, pandemic is new. But I'm really surprised. I'm not really surprised. You can cut that bit. I'm really impressed with how our industry has been able to adjust to continue to service communities. And as I mentioned previously, I think it would have been a different story if this had happened 20 years ago when we didn't have the technology to do this. I mean, the fact we've had construction continue in Australia, and businesses were really quick to adjust their ways of working to prove that they can continue. Because it, I think people don't appreciate that most other countries have actually shut their construction down.
Yep.
Yeah. So for Australia to make that call was a bold one, and it was absolutely the right decision. But that took industry and our clients and governments agencies to really step up and put the right mechanisms in place to ensure that it passed the telegraph test. We have seen some small incidents of groups of people going to coffee shops together, all that kind of stuff, breaching the social, but they're very, very minor, and it was quite early on.
Yep.
So I think actually how to all the to the active sites out there at the moment.
Yeah,
they're doing a sterling job.
I agree. I think that's been a key decision in keeping our economy open. I think construction accounts for, is it 10% or 13% of our GDP or something like that? So yeah, good call. Big call.
Yeah,
but a good call.
Even over the ditch, over the Tasman, it's that they shut their sites down there. So which was a shame. Yeah. Because if you're outside, I mean, and you put mechanisms in place, then it's pretty low risk.
Great. Yeah. Mate, moving to emerging opportunities, like what do you think will be some of the emerging opportunities coming out of this and some of the emerging trends that we'll start to see post-COVID?
I think the biggest emerging trend is really now is challenge everything.
I agree. Love that.
What we understood to be normal is irrelevant. There's quite a lot of things that we've seen. We've had a really good glimpse into what life could be like if we make certain decisions, and also what it means to be innovative and take risk. I mean, I think the acceleration in innovation over the past 3 months has been fantastic to see, where people have just had to do it. Yeah, not ask permission, and balance with the right risk. There's been a lot of great things that have been that have come out of this. We've seen the true impact of human behaviour on the environment. It's like the world is taking a big deep breath at the moment and showing us what it can be like if we
stop polluting it.
Stop polluting it. Yeah, just challenge the way we behave. And it really comes down to our rate of consumption. What we produce, how we produce it. How long it lasts. Gone are the days where you buy things they're designed to last 10 years.
Yep.
They last 18 months, and the warranty runs out, and that's it. You got to get a new one. And I think there's going to be a hopefully there'll be a good government push to improve all that and learn from it effectively.
Yeah.
I think governments and societies need to put less emphasis on growth and more emphasis on sustainability. Unless you're growing in population, growth is somewhat irrelevant. I mean, it's what's wrong with not growing? What's wrong with just staying the same and
doing it better? Just
doing it better and smarter. Yep. Yeah. So I always challenge those who talk about we've our turnover is X, and this year it's going to be, and next year we want it to be X plus 100 million, and you go, well, that's all great, but what about profit? What about sustainability? What about all the other things which are probably just as more important?
Agreed. So it sounds like really, a bit of a rebel party, bit of a rebellious streak, like do and ask for forgiveness later and keep innovating. So you're seeing so many amazing stories of people at the moment who are transforming their manufacturing floor to go and produce shields or visors or whatever, and they're going through their own personal savings. I'm not advocating for that, but that's what people are doing, and they're asking for government grants later. You know, they're hoping they get reimbursed by the government, but they know that there's a need. They're addressing that need and they're getting out on the front foot to do that.
Yeah, and it's been industry, but it's also been in private individuals, including like, you know, there was an 8-year-old girl in the UK who was you know, building face masks, sorry, face shields. So we're using a you know, 3D printer, and she's done about 90 so far. Before she'd even sort of you know, asked for any particular funding, she was just, you know, raiding her own funds, you know, a piggy bank, and to buy the supplies, and produced about 90 when she was interviewed at the weekend, which I think is great. You know, that's an 8-year-old.
Yep, leading the way, showing us how to be leaders.
Well, they are our leaders of the future, aren't they? At the end of the day, so
that's exactly right, mate. Mate, and finally, like final question, what does it mean to you to be an exec?
Yeah, it was really great to be invited by Engineers Australia in 2019 to be engineering executive. In recognition of my work in my field, you know, it's given me more confidence to speak publicly and submit my expertise, and you know, it's given me more of a license, if you like. But it, you know, but it doesn't mean anything unless you're actually also enticing and mentoring the next generation of engineers and leaders. As I mentioned in my bio, as you mentioned in my bio, you know, I've been passionate about this for a long time. You know, about enticing people that are less fortunate into our industry. You know, that's why I help out with the Engineering Age Australia summer schools for Indigenous kids, which is you know, targeting year 10, 11, and 12 kids to you know, give them an understanding of what engineering is, but also actually entice them into that career path, because they're not represented enough, and but also just any form of mentoring and coaching. You know, if you're my age and you haven't got 3 or 4 mentees under your belt, then you're not doing what you should be doing.
Mate, I've heard that from a lot of execs. It's an honour to be invited, because it is invite only. But secondly, it's great to have it, but unless you use it, unless you use that position to mentor, to do the leadership thing really well, and actually train and teach that next generation of leaders coming through, you're kind of wasting it. So it's really awesome to hear that you're using it and using it well.
Thank you.
Okay, so thanks Niall for joining me. Mate, enjoyed talking to you today. Absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Joss, and yeah, thanks for arranging the interview.
No problem.